Hello YouTube, back
Hello.
again, this time on camera and with a guest that I've not had on the channel, but well I have actually, we did the duel.
The duel. The day before my wedding.
Yes, and speaking of lightsabers, that's really what we're going to be talking about, but not the ones from Star Wars. We'll be talking about these beam sabers, which are quite different, and from what I've shown you,
Nastier. Much nastier.
you don't want to be on the receiving end of one, basically.
No. We don't really on the receiving end of either of them, really.
No.
That said, by the looks of it, a lightsaber is a lot more survivable, and you get a cool arm out of it.
Yes, you do. You get a nice arm that you can use with the Force, and anyone can use a lightsaber. Anyone can use a beam saber, funnily enough, provided they have the mobile suit to use it. But it's really a last-ditch weapon because, as any Gundam series will show, you have nothing left when you go in with one of them.
Yeah.
And
you've lost your guns, you've lost everything.
lost your ammo, you've no missiles, you've got no shield. Sometimes they throw the shield away because there's no point in having it.
Yeah.
If you're going in beam saber to beam saber,
Someone is going to die, and it's probably going to be both of us.
yeah, may as well just go for it. But so basically, starting off, difference between lightsaber, beam saber. Lightsaber has a positive charge from the inside of plasma, which gives you that white beam. It comes out at the top, folds down the sides, gives you your colour, and you have a sharp edge where it comes folding down with the colour and where you can see through to the white in the middle.
Which is actually similar to how traditional medieval swords are made.
Yeah.
The phrase back blade, when you're using a two-handed, when you're using a blade that looks like it's got two blades, is because what a lot of people did was they actually only sharpened one side of the blade, because that way they could use the other side for blocking, and it wouldn't damage the blade.
Very much like what the Germans did when, to get around the law against owning a sword, you had essentially a giant knife, but it was still technically...
Ah, yes, the Messer. And the Grossmesser.
Yes!
I like the Grossmesser. Two-handed, about the size of a claymore, and it's a curved blade, which you don't really see enough of in Western swordsmanship.
No, not...
Also, you know what Messer means, don't you?
Messy.
No, knife.
What? Knife?
It literally just means knife or big knife. Did you not know that?
No, I didn't, but I do now.
It's a good one, isn't it?
Well, getting on to these. So the beam saber, where it's opposite to the lightsaber, has a field around the outside, which people in Gundam, you'd know that's called an eye field, and then you have a positive charge on the inside. Field on the outside breaks, field on the inside becomes essentially like getting hit by a giant blowtorch, so it'll melt through metal, it will dissolve skin. Boom, not so much.
Yeah, because to be honest, if you know anything about the human body, skin, organs, eyes, things like that, they melt at a very low temperature. Obviously, they do. That's how you get like first, second, third degree burns. But to get through bone, I mean, there was a big story a few years ago. I'll try and link you to it before the video comes out, where it turned out that a lot of crematoriums, rather than allowing the fire to burn everything down, would actually bring it out and then smash the bones into ash.
Yes, a lot of them still do that. That's why I hate to say it, if you've seen it, it's a more of a white powder, because there's not really any ash left. It is just mostly...
It's just bone. It's bone crust.
But essentially where that comes into play with the beam saber is, if you have seen... I've shown you the scene, I've shown pretty much everyone in this room the scene of Nicola Maffei getting hit with the Sword Strike's beam blade, and it stops at his spine, and it has to stay there. Now, you could say, oh, he stopped purposely because he caught on to what he was doing, but the strike swung low really hard. The Blitz was running towards it. There is no way that the two of them just happened to stop dead there.
You can see that in ballistic gel representations of the use of katanas, long swords. I'm trying to think of any other swords similar, going back to the Grossmesser, because we're talking about a two-handed blade here.
Yeah.
Designed for slashing. It does not actually take as much force as you think to actually slice a person in half. That's where the Japanese terms one body sword, two body sword, three body sword comes from, because it was where the bodies would be stacked up and you would slash down. You don't even need that running start to cut a person through the spine. It's the ribs that cause the problem, but where that strike was, it was across the abdomen.
Right
The
here.
only bone you're going to be facing there is the spine.
And it didn't go through, it just stopped right there. And he had to wait until, because cauterization blood wouldn't be flowing down, it would be flowing back up.
Massive blood pressure.
Till his helmet just went and the whole Gundam exploded eventually. So
really horrifying thing, if you don't mind a little bit of horror before Christmas. The first thing that would have actually happened in slow motion is the tongue and eyes would have swelled and exploded.
which actually you do see happen when that microwave weapon I said about went off. They did just swell up and explode.
So it's actually a scary thought. There's a good chance that character would have been alive right up until the Gundam actually exploded.
Yeah.
Because the blood on the screen may have just been from their tongue and their eyes exploding onto their visor. They were probably still alive in there.
And you may be wondering, why am I going this dark into a Gundam beam saber? But it's because when looking at it, nearly every Gundam comes with one, but you don't see them used as often in the series as possible, and it's mainly because when you think they sort of would have had this agreement between them, do not use this weapon unless it's the last thing you have, and it normally is a last ditch weapon that they use, or if they are using it in combat, they use it to slice off the limbs of the mobile suit, because at least there's some dignity in death there.
Yeah, they're not going to die in the most gruesome, horrific way possible.
Yeah, the only other time I've seen them used is instead of going for the cockpit, they go for the backpack. Backpack explodes, pilot gets killed.
It's a quick
instant.
It's a quick, relatively painless, and although they know they're going to die, at least it's like, well, at least they didn't get fucking stabbed with a beam sword.
Yeah, because there's quite a few. FMS team Norris Packard gets hit with one from the side, and even though he gets swiped with the beam saber right through here, he still presses the trigger on the Gatling gun to fire it. So he's alive while that gun's going off, and that goes on for about 3 or 4 seconds before finally getting sliced through.
Yeah. And if anyone out there might be wondering why would they equip them with a blade like that when it's such a horrific thing, and there might be this agreement not to use it in combat, we've seen from World War I and World War II a weapon called the trench knife. Have you seen it?
I have, yes.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know at home, a trench knife is a knuckle duster with a blade attached and a backhand grip. Any fans of the Naruto series will know that Asuma Sensei uses a pair. But they were actually banned in the Geneva Convention back in like World War I or World War II. But what the American army still did was that they equipped their soldiers with a pair of brass knuckle dusters for close quarters combat in the trenches and bayonets, and then actually supplied them with instructions on how to fuse the two.
So that technically you still had 2 separate weapons, but
it becomes it becomes a weapon of desperation. So
with these, you do have that sort of, as you say, gentleman's agreement that you aren't going to be using these unless it's a last ditch effort. But even then, you can't supply them on it is sort of that underhanded thing that they aren't meant to be killing pilots. These are meant to be taking mobile suits down without actually harming the pilot, because we do see that plenty of times.
Where just a limb gets shredded off, or
a Gundam Unicorn, somebody goes to shoot someone, arm gets sliced off the mobile suit, and they hold the beam saber against the head to say, your move.
Yeah.
Like capture, basically.
Yeah.
So
it's come with me or die horrifically.
Yeah. So you can get away with it like that, but then you see where they are used in a really bad way by pilots from I can't remember the main character's name. Eo Fleming from Gundam Thunderbolt, who decides, I am purposely going to put this through the cockpit.
Oh.
And he actually ends up slicing off somebody's hand only, and that person already had lost his legs earlier in the war, so now he's got one hand.
It's Anakin Skywalker.
Basically, yeah, no legs, no hand, and then what ends up happening to him is they have a unit they're designing that if they link up the nerves, essentially the same way they do with false limbs now, to the mobile suit, you can control it as if it was your own ones. So it works best if all 4 are connected, so they decide, right, well, cut his right arm off. So that's it. They take the only remaining limb he has just so that they can put him in that machine. And while technically that does work, near enough everybody dies in that fight. It's like one of the most sad PTSD-inducing Gundam series ever. Yes, it's Christmas time, everyone. Have some cake.
And the fact we're discussing a robot that is green and red. There is one other point I'd like to make on that for anyone out there, because you always get this. I get this whenever I've done a weapons talk. Someone saying, if this is such an effective weapon, why should there be this gentleman's agreement? Why should there be this agreement not to use this except at last-ditch efforts? And the point there is a common understanding of what is good and evil, because for God's sake, even Hitler refused to use his version of the A-bomb and mustard gas.
Yeah.
So even the sickest, most evil mind in the last century understood the basic premise between what is true, what is evil, and what is truly evil. And this right here, this is truly evil.
Yeah.
That is killing someone in the most brutal, horrendous, and horrifying way you can imagine. It's a good thing the Gundam suits explode, because could you imagine someone surviving after the initial blood shock, or someone having to identify the corpse?
Which does happen sometimes, unfortunately. You have that in the worst series to watch, because it involves a 6-year-old who gets to be friends with somebody in both armies who end up fighting each other at the end, and he doesn't know that they're the ones in the cockpit.
Bollocks.
And he hears he overhears the soldiers say, and I quote, "Anything left of the Zaku pilot? Nothing, sir. Pile of hamburger meat."
Oh! Wow.
Because
Jenny
what
looks
happens to
horrified
him
right
is
now.
the beam saber goes right through the upper half of the cockpit.
Right.
So that would have been,
His torso.
yeah, everything just went. So there would have not been much left of him.
And actually talk about scale of size. Looking at a toy, it's difficult to imagine. But in in the Gundam series, you're talking about like
80 centimetre diameter, probably, for a beam blade. So
fucking hell.
it's not that big.
No.
There's a plenty good chance that it will miss you.
Yeah. An 80 centimetre diameter, that's less than a metre. You're talking about, actually what you just said, actually, a head, probably neck, top part of the spine.
Yeah.
You'd still, basically they'd be left with just this crater here. Yeah, it's actually not too dissimilar to some cannon wounds.
Yeah.
From pirate ships.
Yeah.
Because if you get shot straight in the face with a cannon, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's going to take you with the cannonball, but you're
Yeah.
going to, whatever they recover from you is just going to be a shattered mess.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a horrible, horrible weapon, and I love it. That says a lot more about me, doesn't it? Like, I would not want to use something like that, because that is such a horrendous, horrible weapon to wield. But just the fact that it exists in an anime, in a canon, is kind of really cool that they've actually gone into the science, the understanding, and they've then turned that into a sword. Because it would have been so easy to turn it into a projectile.
Yes, they actually go into, they give you the outputs of it. So I went looking at the general output is 200 kilowatts, which works out about burn temperature about 1200 degrees, and bone doesn't burn through until about 1600. So
yeah,
that's why it causes so many problems. When you do get stabbed with it, it almost breaks the field completely, so there's not really much of a beam saber coming out the other end either.
1200 degrees Celsius, yeah?
Yeah.
If I'm recalling right, that's actually just below blacksmithing temperature, which is the temperature where iron becomes demagnetized, right?
Yeah.
That's like 1300?
1350 to 1400, I think.
Yeah. We'll double check the numbers, but I'm pretty certain that's right.
Yeah.
And bloody hell, so it's actually not even that hot.
No.
When you talk about like scaling what humans will be used to in that, because humans have been working iron for thousands of years. We're talking like pre-Abrahamic religion. We've been using it for like 10,000 years at least. So bloody hell, that's actually quite scary that it's that low.
Yeah,
to be higher.
The problem is if they do pump more power into them, which you can see in 1 or 2 series, it becomes an unstable weapon and pretty much a bomb in your hand.
Oof.
So it's whether or not you want to go down that route, or you just want to stick with it as is and hope for the best.
And from what I have seen, because I'm not as big in my Gundam anime as you, obviously, you've got me here as someone who's really into weapons.
Yes.
From what I have seen, Gundam suits look, once you actually break something on them, they're very fragile.
Well, yeah.
So
the entire internal armor, internal exoskeleton, internal skeleton, which you can see here. Once something goes on it, they have what is called a fluid pulse system, where basically for refilling the hydraulic system in it, as one piston moves, another piston behind it repressurizes the tank.
Yeah.
So as one thing gets cut, all of a sudden hydraulic fluid is leaking, the whole thing depressurizes, and the mobile suit becomes useless. And then it's only a matter of time until you are either exploding or drifting into space.
Yeah. So all I can think there is that if you did have that one with the higher output, because you can just imagine some psychopath going, let's pump this up. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
And it just goes bang. It's like, well, fuck.
I can show you that actually after this.
Oh, sweet! Some psychopath actually tried.
Tries. Now, fortunately, both people in both suits do survive, but both mobile suits get destroyed in the process.
Yeah.
Because neither of them can withstand the enormous amount of energy being pumped into the beam sabers. But yeah, that's really all I had to say on them. Is beam sabers are bad.
Yeah, they are
as much as, you know, it's great to pose them with them and that, but I was really just looking into it and thinking, hang on, these are actually kind of... They're
disgusting.
They're not just dead, they're nasty. This is not the way I would want to go.
Actually, going back to what you said at the start, there's no honour in it.
No.
Because even in the worst fight ever, there is honour between soldiers. There's honour between combatants.
I mean, we're at Christmas time, you go back to World War One, the German soldiers and the Irish soldiers jumped out of the trenches and played football.
And the English. Go on, we were there too.
Okay, everyone, let's all have a game of football.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly that. So, like I said, there's honour between soldiers. They are still people. This is the ultimate dehumanising, you are just meat to me.
Yeah. And even then, dehumanising it further, you're in a machine. It's the machine you're trying to take out. What's the easiest way? Go for the middle part. I mean, for God's sake, some of them actually have a red hatch over the cockpit to let you know exactly where it is.
Shit, that just seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah. Originally, that red cockpit hatch was put on so as to tell other pilots this is where not to hit if you're using a beam saber, but then you have the odd asshole who uses it as a target.
You know what that is, don't you? That's Battle of Agincourt. Battle of Agincourt in the 100-Year War, where the French knights rode past the English longbowmen, because longbowmen were peasants, and knights did not fight peasants. Knights fought other knights, noble versus noble, and the longbowmen who'd been trained by knights to aim for the knight's weak spot, which was under the armpit. The English army at that time took no prisoners, and at that time, obviously, taking a knight as a prisoner was standard, because they're noblemen.
Yeah.
That battle, no one was taken prisoner. The entire French knights were decimated, which then actually caused a massive boom in military research, which allowed the French armies to develop large crossbows able to wage war, and quite frankly, it's the descent into guns. It's easier to train a crossbowman. You can train a crossbowman in a week, whereas training a decent longbowman takes years.
Yes, as the history teacher that I work with told us, to train a proper longbowman, you have to go back to his grandfather and work from there to create a line of generations who will learn to use the longbow efficiently.
And for God's sake, at that time, it was in common law that any young men on a Sunday would not attend church. Instead, they would go and practice longbowmanship in the country green.
Yeah.
And many states actually extended that to every 3 days a week, you would go and do longbowmanship.
And that's why the crossbows were one of the first weapons that were banned by the church, isn't it?
Classified as a weapon of war.
Yeah, the weapon of mass destruction almost.
Yeah, it really was our first... Yeah, it was our first beam saber, effectively. It was the first weapon of no honour, just kill.
Yeah, it's any old idiot can pull a trigger.
Yeah. And again, we see the descent then into guns. I know for a fact that you can actually learn to use a gun in an afternoon and shoot really accurately.
Yeah.
But to learn how to use crossbow takes a week, bow takes years, sword takes a lifetime.
Yeah.
It's what's the most efficient killing machine.
Yeah. And I suppose that's really where this becomes flip turn, because in order to use those swords is really easy.
Yeah.
And
it's just swinging a club.
Yeah, it's... there's so many times that you can say it, but nasty.
Because that's the thing. One last thing about this, because obviously I'm sure this video is getting a bit long and we can talk about this for hours.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We have been doing over the last few months, quite frankly. Every time we talk, it's like, hey, beam sabers. Oh my god, beam sabers. But where the difference between that and an actual sword is, and like we're discussing earlier with the lightsabers, which have different edges, is that obviously hitting someone with the flat of a blade, it's not really going to do a lot. It might clang a bit, but that's it. But this thing, you can hit from any angle, and it's going to shred.
Yeah.
You can hit side, you can slap them with it, and it's still going to kill them.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate idiot's tool.
Exactly. It doesn't matter where you get them from. You can just catch them off guard. You can completely pierce through it. You can stab. You can bring it... There's even some who flick it back and bring it down. It doesn't matter.
Ah, backhanded slashes. Nice. Yeah. One last question about it.
Go on.
Okay. Is there any defence to this thing besides another beam saber or the other person's honour?
There's only one thing, and it only gets introduced about 5 years after the beam saber is first introduced, and that is they create a coating that can be applied to shields. Now, some mobile suits have this coating applied. The problem is it is an electromagnetic coating, so when it's applied to a mobile suit, it reduces its mobility, but when it's applied to a shield, the shield can take about 3 hits from a beam saber before the coating becomes inefficient.
Oh, so it's still not even a perfect defence.
No, the only thing that comes in much later than that, about if this was 0079, you're talking about 0088, I think it is. So that's nearly 10 years later. Is something called an eye field, but that requires, where a mobile suit's powered by its own miniature generator, you need a miniature generator for the shield. This one has one. You see that small grey disc in the middle of the ring of white shield?
Yeah.
That's an eye field.
Okay.
It basically disperses the beam field around the beam, so then the whole beam just completely separates. It shorts it out, essentially.
And you instantly disarm your opponent's weapon with a shield?
Yep.
So can it become re-enabled in the same fight? Does it have to have like maintenance done on it before it can be used again?
So long as it still has a charge.
It can be re-engaged?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
So you get some defences against it, but...
They're not perfect.
Yeah, the eye field is incredibly expensive and very hard to manipulate.
You'd only give it to, effectively, your most efficient Gundam suit users who are almost definitely going to be going up against guys who are doing this.
And then the ones who would use the beam coating on their shield, which would be pretty much everyone. The problem there becomes everyone uses their shield to defend against ordinary beam rifle attacks, which removes the efficiency. And then you're just effectively...
So it's useless again.
Yeah.
You might as well be going in with a tin plate.
Exactly.
So, aside from taking one of these psychopaths out before they get to you, the only other thing I can see is just a way of defending against it is having someone who, or one of those suits that can mobilise themselves, basically a grappling one that will get in, lock around the arm, and then let them stab them, because at least then you're taking them out with you.
Yeah.
That's it.
You do get some that do that. In that series I mentioned again where they up the power in the beam saber, somebody does get stabbed with a beam saber through to the backpack, so the pilot's still alive. He knows the backpack's going to blow up and take him out, so he takes his own one out and stabs down into the other one.
Now they're both locked together and they're both going to die.
Boom.
Yeah. Take them out with you.
Yeah, as well. I mean, either he's going to fly away and you're going to die, or you're going to die and he's going to die.
Better take him out with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
I think we can wrap it up from there.
Yeah.
This is the Baron, who has now a second channel, and I'm going to link you to that channel. This has been Max Mechas in an extensive, loose talk about beam sabers that has spiraled into other things. Hopefully, I learned a thing or two from this. We'll see where this goes from here. I might do other videos talking about weapons.
That would be quite fun.
If not, well, we'll see how this goes and go from there. But hopefully see more of this in the future and more reviews coming soon, because as you can see, there's quite a lot of shit behind me that has not been on camera.
Yeah.
So, thanks for watching.
Have a Merry Christmas.
And as you always say,
Get out of my house.
Oh.